So there we go. We're now recording. Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining. I appreciate that a lot. My name is Gustav Jonsson. I'm Swedish and I work here at Peakon. Been working here for the last 5 years. The company's been around for about 5 years. So super happy to have everyone with us today in this online webinar. We are trying to have as much interaction as we can. You know, it's not really a face-to-face, of course, but we're trying to have as much interaction as possible. So please just write in the Q&A or in the chat if you have any questions, comments, things that you'd like to know a bit more about, etc., etc. So there's two features, Q&A and the chat function that will work. So I will, without much further ado, share my screen. So there you go. See something now, I hope, right? And also start the presentation. So if you don't see anything, please write in the chat and the Q&A as well. So what we will go through today is a quite exciting thing, actually, to be honest. We have done quite a lot of research on this, and I'll get back to that a little bit later, but we'll talk around some actions that your leaders can take in order to improve employee engagement. And not just because sort of I think so, or we think so, or we have an opinion, but we have looked at a lot of data for this, as in what actions have managers taken and what have those actions done to the score. So I'll come back to that, and I'll just go through a little bit in short of what Peakon is, because not all people on the call are equally familiar with Peakon. So I'll just do that a bit quick. So we're a platform that measures employee experience, basically, and we collect feedback in different ways. So we collect feedback via a survey, right? So you answer 10, sometimes 5, 10, 0, whatever. In the survey on a number of different questions regarding your engagement and regarding other stuff around work. And we also collect data from the HRIS that your company has by different ways. So we have first name, email, manager, we have your department, your region, etc., stuff like that, your tenure, for example. Quite interesting things. And then we look at that and we direct you towards actions. So leaders get a dashboard that they look at and are able to take action in order to improve their team's engagement. Employees also get a dashboard that they can look at to improve their own engagement. So for the people that are in an admin position, we really want them to focus on the actions, and we really want them to focus on closing the feedback loop, helping their managers to close the feedback loop, to go from collecting the data to seeing, okay, what's the analysis say, to improve that, to take action on it, and then of course it starts all over again, you know, the agile wheel, so to speak, right? And we'd rather have our administrators do a lot less of the I will create a report for, etc. So we do that automated in the tool, and we also distribute that across in the organization. For managers, really what we want to do is help them to change, you know, in a positive way, to empower them to, with data analysis and action suggestions, to actually take action together with the team to drive a positive change towards increasing engagement, because we all agree that increased engagement is something that we'd like to strive towards. We'd also agree that increased engagement in teams leads to increased profits, like less absenteeism, more creative teams, more productive teams, etc. For the employees, we'd like to keep it, you know, quite simple to give your feedback in a very friendly environment. We'd also like to be smart around what are the questions that we serve to you, individual employee, at which time, right? And who's smarter than doing that than an algorithm. So we use quite interesting machine learning techniques in order to serve the right questions to the right person at the right time. And through all of this, we get a lot of data, and you know, one sort of a couple of data points, as in 80 million data points we have collected, and this doubles every 2.5 months. So it's really quick, and also that we're getting a lot of data, a lot of structured data, which is interesting, right? So since we have the same questions delivered to everyone using Peakon, and we also have similar demographical data around the employees, such as the things that I mentioned before around department, local office, tenure, age, etc. We can draw quite interesting conclusions based on that. And recently, we actually looked at analyzed the comments, a lot of comments, as in 14 million comments, to make up our latest report. You can find this at peakon.com/heartbeat, as you see the URL below. We actually launched it yesterday, so it's just fresh out. And it talks about what do employees expect from you guys in 2020. It's a lot of interesting mentions. So we looked at the comment, what are people talking about? Sustainability, the environment, plastic, things like that is top of this. Flexible working, which of course in these times is very interesting. That's definitely a demand. And there are some other very interesting topics around diversity and well-being, for example. But please read the report. It's at peakon.com/heartbeat. And also actually from all of that data, we're getting also quite a number of interesting things around what we are supposed to talk about today, namely the actions. And just to give you a little bit of an overview of that, of what are the two types of actions in Peakon. So you as a leader, you're a team leader, you're an HR leader, you're a CEO, right? You have two versions of actions, so to speak. You have one, which are the recommended actions. So the actions that come from us, that we have written, that we have scoped out in our organizational development science team. And then we also have custom actions that managers write in themselves. They craft them totally themselves, right? Interestingly enough, what we saw when we're starting to do this analysis, that our recommended actions were twice as effective. So the story of this graph is any action is a good action because it will improve engagement. But the suggested one, which is the sort of amber color of the graph here, is the recommended or the suggested actions. So what we saw was that in average is actually twice as effective as the actions that managers put in themselves, which is of course very interesting. When doing this analysis as well, we first looked at what were the custom actions that were great, that had a really good impact on engagement, and we added those. We sort of congregated those and took those into our suggested actions as well. We will be looking at this from a number of different drivers of engagement, right? So we ask questions within these drivers of engagement, management support being one of them, and we also give you then suggestions for these specific drivers. So management support is one. And one that was super interesting to see from our point of view was this one. And this action is basically saying hello and goodbye to your team. It can do massive things to your team. So of course, there's a little bit more to this action than just going and saying hello and then sitting in your office and closing the door and then saying goodbye when you leave, right? It is also forming relations with your team. There's a bit of a further description to this action. But what it can do is astonishing. Over a period of 25 weeks. It's almost a 1.0 increase in the score on an average from 0 to 10. So almost a 1.0 increase just saying hello and goodbye. This is of course getting to know your team. What was the weekend like? What one example actually from our office, which I think is quite interesting, is that our office manager, Maya, she took an effort. We're about 70 people here in the Copenhagen office of Peakon. She took the effort of learning what everybody's kids' names are. I just think that's fantastic. That's a very focused effort to be able to ask me, for example, hey, how's Eddie? How's the weekend, right? And that is a fantastic thing, and really getting to know me a little bit more, right? So that was a super interesting one that we found within management support. Also, an action that you should do as a manager is actually make it easy to come to me and ask for guidance when you have some challenges, right? And important enough, the second part of this type of action is just without me passing judgment on someone's performance, to have that what is called psychological safety, to actually go to your manager and say, well, I actually would like you to know how I should proceed now. And instead of saying, well, you should know that, otherwise you're not fit for the position or something like that, but actually highlight and appreciate that show of vulnerability from the employee, to make it easy to ask your team for guidance. It's definitely an action that also here over 20 weeks is proven to improve the score by about 1.0. Then it drops a little bit, but that's an interesting one. One really, really crucial thing that we also saw when looking at all of the actions that managers were taking is to start hosting very regular one-on-one meetings with your employees. And in this example, or in this action, we used the bi-weekly one. In terms of checking in bi-weekly with your employees has a huge effect on the score for management support. We also saw some quite interesting things. So this is a little bit of a cliffhanger that I'll get back to. But what should be on the agenda for those one-on-ones is actually also pretty clear. And we'll come back to that. So 3 agenda points that you as a leader should have for the bi-weekly one-on-ones that you should be starting, right? In the terms of goal setting, so this is a driver of engagement that talks about, okay, how should we set goals and what should those goals aspire to be, and how should that work, right? And in general, what we found was to set quarterly goals actually has a quite a big impact, right? To just do that. Many people, of course, this could sound to some people like, well, it's obvious, set goals. Yeah, we always do that, right? But also continuously refer back to these when you do your short-term weekly planning sessions. So in terms of goal setting, set quarterly goals, but also to introduce week-on-week planning sessions in order to track how are you tracking towards the overall quarterly goal. The quarterly goal, of course, being not like a yearly goal, because that's too long and people do not really reference that, but a quarterly goal, and then every week you track the progress towards that goal. And also, what will you do this week, or what are the tasks that we should complete this week in order to get us closer to that quarterly goal. Interesting enough, with this one, this is quite sort of a slow starter, right? The score goes up very little in the first couple of 5 weeks, right? And then it's sort of slowly it's going up towards the 0.5, right? Because this takes time. And then again, this is measured over 6 months, right? Or about 25 weeks. So interesting enough, over a period of 2 quarters, right? As you do this. There's also, of course, an option in Peakon to track your actions so that your employees feel a part of this. And this is actually for the example from my colleague Louise's dashboard, or shared dashboard with her team. So you can share the dashboard, and then the team could, of course, look at the progress or not progress that you're doing around this, right? Interestingly enough, in this particular occasion, we saw that the score was dropping a little bit within the organizational fit driver, and an action was taken in order to host a team session around mental health awareness in order to battle this change. So you can share this progress also with your team in a quite simple way on Peakon. Looking at growth. So within growth, we are talking about a personal growth, right? So you as an employee, you feel that you are growing in your role, you're growing in your responsibilities, etc., etc. And what was very clear when we started looking into this is that it can only be improved if you actually understand the individual needs of each employee. So for an example, there's also, it's quite clear that one size does not fit all when it comes to growth. Not all people on your team want to become people managers or leaders in the business. Not all people in your team would like to get a very specific skill that they should master. Some people like to be generalists. And how do you then know that? Well, you talk to them and you understand what exactly are your needs, or how exactly do you want to grow. And then understanding that on an individual basis is crucial to understand growth and also to improve the growth score. This is then the first thing that you should put on your agenda for the one-on-ones, right? So always discuss growth and the progress towards your growth plan or your growth goal, right? And then again, even if not much had happened, it's super important to keep it on top of mind and actually have it on your bi-weekly one-on-one agenda. We're doing this at Peakon in this way. We have 5 different conversations where we sort of kick off and talk a little bit about what would the growth plan be. Then we set the direction, look at, okay, how do we measure success of that? We implement actions, and then, we reflect on what we've done, and then basically renew. So in an agile fashion, then kick off again with the another growth plan, etc. We can talk more about this if you want to hear more about our process for growing. But these are individual conversations with every employee that leaders do here at Peakon. I'm not saying it's the best process, but it's our process. Maybe it could be something for you to draw some conclusions from. In terms of the workload of every employee, really helping people to prioritize could be a huge thing that you as a leader could do. And if we look at this one in terms of also creating this psychological safety that we were discussing a little bit before, so that employees could come to you and say, well, I need help with either this or this. What should I do, right? And then you as a leader could look at the different aspects of the different tasks or outcomes, and then help people prioritize without passing judgment again on their performance. Because this is not a performance thing. And this is, again, you want your employees to come to you with these conflicting priorities, because you want to create that sense of psychological safety in the team, so that they do feel that they can do that and do not sit alone and try to prioritize themselves. And again, as I've seen, this has a really top after 20 weeks, right? As it's almost up to 1.5, an increase in the score. This is the second thing that you should have on your agenda for the one-on-ones, to always discuss the workload, right? To always have an idea of the employee's workload, maybe have them estimated in terms of how many % have you been at the last weeks, and what do you foresee for the next 2 weeks, etc. Have them have a bit of, an estimate on that. And of course, how can you help? I have an example here from my own time in Peakon. Was it now two and a half years ago, maybe? I was a customer success manager. We didn't have that many customer success managers, but we had a lot of customers, fortunately enough. But for me, that meant that I had a lot of customers in my portfolio, almost 100. So that meant that I had a lot to do. I had an insane workload at the same time as becoming a father for the first time, which of course was quite stressful. And my manager back then, a guy called Patrick, who's now chief evangelist at Peakon, really helped me to prioritize my workload and to help to take some stuff off of me when I really needed it, in order to absolutely, in my case, have I understood afterwards, avoid burnout. So really important part of being a manager, and something or a part where you can really make a difference for your employees. And this is the sort of last couple of examples that I have, and a very interesting one around recognition and feedback. And what we saw here in the data was that if you'd like to get your recognition scores up, you should make praise and feedback a daily habit. So this is not for your weekly, or sorry, bi-weekly one-on-ones. This is every day, every hour, to remember to praise good work, and also provide feedback on work that's been done well and what could be done different in the future. We have a concept here at Peakon called 3-2-1. So after a project or a meeting could be, we just talk about, okay, what are the 3 things that went well? What are the 2 things that we could do different next time? And what's the 1 thing that we should not do next time, right? Simply put like that. There are some teams more in software development that do retrospectives after every 2 weeks or 1 week sprints, where they talk about, again, the same type of feedback, right? What went well, what can we do better next time, and what should we stop doing? It's called start, stop, continue. So there are a lot of frameworks out there to use for this kind of contextual feedback. I think you don't really need a framework for praise. Maybe there are some things that could help, and we'll get to that. But I often think that, oh, someone did that really well, right? I often think that. And when I sit in a meeting, I sat in one the other day, and I thought like, that's great work, that. And then I think that, but do I say it to the person, or do I let the person know? Well, not at all times. And I've actually made it a very conscious effort right now to make a difference there. So for example, this session the other day was done by a colleague of mine called Holly, and she's been doing a lot of work with this new system that we will be using, and it looks amazing, and she's done amazing, and all the processes are beautifully set up, something that I could never do, but which she's an expert on. And so I just, after the session, I just wrote her like, fantastic work, that's amazing. Colleague of mine, Camille, also put a video out for the new report about the employee expectations. And being on video is quite hard sometimes, right? And talking to the camera could be quite hard sometimes, or sitting in a webinar like this could be quite hard sometimes. So I just told Camille how great she was doing on the video. And I think that this is something that you can't do enough of, in my perspective. And I think that employees cannot get enough of positive feedback either. I've never heard someone say, "Oh, I get too much positive feedback." Right? I also did this actually in my personal life. I went to the Swedish mountains to ski with my family, and on the way there, because we needed to stop because you cannot drive 11 hours in one go with a little kid, so we stopped at a hotel in the middle, like this hotel in a smaller town in Sweden, and the breakfast was amazing. The breakfast was just simply amazing. It had everything on it that you could ever want from a breakfast. And I've been, now I might sound a bit entitled or not so humble, but I've been staying at some hotels, that what you do. But this one was just out of that league. It was fantastic breakfast. And I thought that, and I was like, okay, I should say this to the person in charge of the breakfast. So I went up to this lady that was in charge of the breakfast and said, "This is fantastic. This is great. Thank you so much for providing this breakfast." She was very happy about that. Very happy to hear that. So if you think something, and if you think something positive, just say it to the person. Write them an email. Go up and pat them on the back or on the shoulder and just tell them that they did a great job. Third thing that you should have on your bi-weekly agenda. So this is not having performance discussions every hour, but have them on a regular cadence and have them in the bi-weekly meetings. So we have three things to talk about now in the one-on-ones, right? We have growth, like how are you progressing towards your growth plan or growth goals? We have workload. How did you, what percentage were you the last 2 weeks, and what do you foresee for the next 2 weeks? And talk about your performance during the last 2 weeks has been XYZ. Here's how we can change it. Here's how we can improve it, etc., etc. 3 things to put on your one-on-ones. And I wanted to leave you here with a couple of examples of recognition of how it can be done in more of a frameworky kind of way, but still quite nimble. So this is one thing, and this is sort of all highlighting yourself, which is a bit weird actually, but this is what we do when you have what we call a Peakoversary. So I had my 4-year anniversary recently, and then Phil, is the CEO, talks about weird stuff, and Mel, my manager, also gives me a really nice feedback, and then Michael Dean, one of my friends here that I've been working with together for 10 years, also does quite a funny thing. And this is also shared with the entire company so that everyone can add that little speech about it. For me, I was deeply moved by this. Very, very happy to receive something like this. But maybe, as you can tell as well, I am quite a vocal person, and I speak up and I speak a lot at work and all of that. And there's some people that are not. This is Davi. He's also, I've been working with him for 10 years. Fantastic guy. Very, very kind guy, extremely talented at what he does. He is a front-end developer, so the sort of magic that when you click around in Peakon and everything works and the animations and all that, that's Davi that has done that. He's also the mastermind behind the Heartbeat site, so peakon.com/heartbeat. And he's just getting so much praise here, right? And he actually, when he saw this at his 4-year anniversary, he reacted with like a crying smiley, which is cool, and you could really see that he was very moved by this feedback from his colleagues and his managers. This is a small thing to do, but just highlighting the anniversary and what people have done well and why you like working with them. Because also for the people that are not the most vocal, they're not getting vocal feedback all the time, right? Or maybe not written feedback all the time. This is a great opportunity to do so. We also do something that I also have these physical cards here, right? So we have a couple of values here at Peakon, Among them is We Care. We have one Winning with Integrity and Tenacity. We have one called Serious Not Seriously, Transparency is our iOS, etc. And we have cards for all these. This is actually an idea that comes from Starbucks originally, and also Patrick, my ex-manager, was the one that brought this to Peakon. So we have a card for each value. And then if someone has, demonstrated behaviors that align with that value, you write the card, you give the card physically to them, and you also put that up in a channel on we use Slack internally. Not everyone does, but and it could be on your workplace or on your Microsoft Teams site or whatever, intranet or something like that, right? And I thought actually the first time that I heard about these, I was like, oh, okay, that seems a bit cheesy, right? Maybe it works in Starbucks, but will it work for me? That was before I got my first card. Because when I got my first card, that felt amazing, to be honest. Because the things that you do day to day, right? It's all sometimes you just do them. You don't really think about that that's making a difference for someone else, but it really does. And I think the initial one here, the We Care one, this one was that I ran some extra product training for our QA team. So quality assurance, basically the people that are checking that everything is working on Peakon, right? And they were super happy about that. And I didn't really think twice about it. I was like, yeah, I just did, some extra product sessions. It was very, very helpful for them. And the entire team signed this card, which also made the extra time that I spent, even more worth it, because it felt fantastic. Also felt really cool to get like a physical card, right? Something that I could hold on to, and not just like in a digital form. So that could be a tip. I know that many organizations have a similar thing, but it just really, really feels good in my mind. And then the last example that I wanted to give you was, so we also have, so in our team, I'm in the customer success team, and what our customers are doing is they're launching, right? So they buy Peakon, and then there's a period, and then they launch to their first, their first survey, etc., right? And one of those clients in the US is Staples. So convenience store with a lot of different things for your office or for your home office or for your home in general. And they launched a survey, 27,000 employees. And then actually Gabe and Casper went down to the local Staples store and talked to manager Manny, who will then be one of our users. So one person that will use the platform. And this is everyday work here at Peakon, right? We launch customers all the time, but this is also a channel where you put in those everyday things that happen, and then people are reacting with these like emojis or hearts, etc. Of course, Bobby here, great work. Hoping they become a staple client of ours. Ooh, that's a dad joke, that, if you've seen one. But of course, there's also a place for that right now. But what I mean here is also to get that everyday recognition for things that, might not be recognized. Otherwise, it's just like, oh, that's a part of, how the project should work, right? But yeah, that is amazing. That is a lot of work behind that. And sort of doing a little bit of extra recognition for that makes a lot of sense in my mind. So to summarize, say hello to your team managers, right? Care about them, know a little bit more about them, make relations with them, because it matters. Have bi-weekly one-on-ones in which you talk about their growth plans, their workload, and you have performance discussions with them. That's the 3 agenda items that you as a leader should have. The rest of the one-on-one is their meeting. It's what they want to talk about, not what you want to talk about. Remember that, right? But you have 3 points that you should talk about, because that will affect your score. And then the last one, have like an always-on mentality for feedback and praise in your team, mostly praise. Just think about an 80-20 rule, like 80% positive feedback, 20% constructive feedback, and just praise all the time. When you think it, say it. Thank you for joining. I appreciate that a lot. And I will actually love if there were some questions. There are none now in the Q&A, but if there are any, I would love to hear your feedback, to talk to you about certain things that you've maybe done in your business. It'd be amazing to hear some examples or get some feedback. What do you think? Do you think that it makes sense? Will you start using this in your organization, etc.? What do you think about this webinar? Do you think it's okay? Do you think we can improve? Give me like a 3, 2, 1, like 3 things that you did well, 2 things different next time, and 1 thing, stop doing that. Stop saying so many, I don't know, something like that. And that was the official end of the webinar. I'll stop the recording. But I'll be happy to get some questions if you have any. But thanks a lot for joining. And yeah, I hope to see you next time as well.